What happens when two of the most iconic African-American actors in Hollywood history, two people who have known each other for decades, two legends who have fought similar battles and broken similar barriers, suddenly find themselves on opposite sides of a confrontation that nobody saw coming? What you're about to witness is one of the most shocking moments in daytime television history. The moment when Samuel L. Jackson, the highest-grossing actor of all time, sat across from Whoopi Goldberg and watched a friendship unravel in real time on live television. The studio went dead silent. The audience couldn't believe what they were seeing. And what happened next would prove that even the closest relationships can shatter when egos collide and old resentments surface. Before we dive into this explosive story, make sure to subscribe and drop your thoughts in the comments, because trust me, you're going to want to talk about this one. The morning had started with an unusual energy at the View Studios. Samuel L. Jackson was coming on the show, and everyone knew that meant the interview would be anything but boring. At 76 years old, Samuel remained one of the most bankable and recognizable actors on the planet, with a filmography that spanned over 150 films and a box office total that exceeded $27 billion worldwide. He was there to promote his latest project, but more than that, he was there to see an old friend. Or so he thought. Samuel arrived at the studio. He had known Whoopi for over 30 years, since the days when they were both struggling actors, trying to make it in an industry that didn't always know what to do with talented black performers. They had supported each other through triumphs and failures, through controversies and comebacks. He had no reason to expect anything other than a friendly conversation between old colleagues. What he didn't know was that Whoopi had been stewing for weeks over comments Samuel had made in a recent interview with another outlet. In that interview, Samuel had been asked about the current state of black cinema and had made some remarks that Whoopi interpreted as dismissive of the work that women, particularly black women, had done to change the industry. The comments had been taken out of context, as comments often are, but by the time they reached Whoopi's ears, they had been transformed into something that felt like a personal attack on everything she had fought for. The studio lights were bright as Samuel took his seat at the famous table. He greeted the other hosts warmly, sharing a particularly long hug with Whoopi that the audience found touching. They had no idea what was about to unfold. "Our next guest has been in more movies than anyone can count," Whoopi began, her voice carrying its usual warmth, but with something underneath that the other hosts couldn't quite identify. "He's Nick Fury. He's Jules Winfield. He's Mace Windu. Please welcome my old friend, Samuel L. Jackson." The applause was thunderous. Samuel waved to the audience with that familiar intensity in his eyes, the same intensity that had made him one of the most compelling screen presences of his generation. Thank you. It's always good to be here. Good to see you, Whoopi. Been too long." Joy Behar asked about his latest film, and Samuel launched into an enthusiastic description of the project, his distinctive voice filling the studio with the same magnetic energy that had captivated audiences for decades. He talked about his co-stars, about the director's vision, about the physical demands of still doing action sequences at his age. "You know, people keep asking me when I'm going to slow down," Samuel said with a laugh. "And I tell them the same thing every time. I'll slow down when they stop offering me interesting roles. So far, that hasn't happened." The audience laughed appreciatively. This was the Samuel L. Jackson they had come to see, confident and charismatic, and utterly in command of the room. For a few minutes, everything seemed normal. Then Whoopi leaned forward, and the energy in the studio shifted dramatically. "So, Sam," Whoopi began, her voice carrying an edge that made the other hosts exchange nervous glances. "I read that interview you did last month, the one where you talked about black cinema and what's wrong with it. You want to tell our audience what you said?" Samuel's expression flickered with something that might have been confusion. "I said a lot of things in that interview, Whoopi. You're going to have to be more specific." "Let me refresh your memory then." Whoopi's voice had hardened noticeably. "You said that black cinema has become too focused on trauma and suffering, that we keep telling the same stories over and over, that Hollywood has put black filmmakers in a box and we're not fighting hard enough to get out of it." Samuel nodded slowly, clearly sensing that this was heading somewhere uncomfortable. "I did say something like that, yes, and I stand by it. I think we're capable of telling more diverse stories than Hollywood gives us credit for. That's not a controversial opinion." "But then you said something else, didn't you?" Whoopi pressed, her eyes locked on Samuel's face. "You said that the people who are getting the most attention for black cinema right now are the ones who play it safe, who give white audiences what they expect to see, who don't challenge the system the way our generation did. The studio had gone quiet. The other hosts were frozen in their seats, clearly unsure how to handle what was rapidly becoming a confrontation between two legends. "Whoopi, I think you're taking what I said out of context," Samuel said, his voice still calm, but now carrying a warning undertone that anyone who had seen his films would recognize. "Am I?" Whoopi's voice rose slightly. "Because it sounded to me like you were taking shots at people who have worked just as hard as you have to change this industry. People who have won Oscars and broken barriers while you were busy making Marvel movies." The accusation landed like a slap. Several audience members gasped. Joy Behar's eyes went wide. Sarah Haynes looked like she wanted to disappear into her chair. The tension in the studio had become almost unbearable. Samuel's expression hardened, the easygoing charm evaporating to reveal something much more intense beneath. "Marvel movies? You want to talk about Marvel movies, Whoopi? Those Marvel movies have grossed more money than any franchise in film history. They've employed thousands of people. They've given opportunities to actors and directors who might never have gotten them otherwise. Don't sit there and act like that work is somehow beneath you." "I'm not saying it's beneath anyone," Whoopi shot back. "I'm saying that when you sit in interviews criticizing how other black artists are navigating this industry, you should look in the mirror first. You've made a fortune playing the same angry character in 100 different movies. Nick Fury is Jules Winfield with an eye patch. That's not exactly pushing the boundaries of black cinema, is it?" The accusation seemed to hit Samuel somewhere deep. His jaw tightened, and when he spoke, his voice had dropped to that dangerous register that had made him famous for playing men you didn't want to cross. "The same character? Whoopi, I've played over 150 roles in my career. I've done Shakespeare. I've done Tarantino. I've done Spike Lee joints and indie films that nobody saw, but that meant everything to me. I've played slaves and presidents and everything in between. So don't you dare sit there and reduce my entire career to one character because it fits whatever narrative you're trying to push right now." The counterattack was fierce and precise. Whoopi's expression shifted, but she wasn't backing down. "I'm not reducing your career to anything. I'm pointing out the hypocrisy of someone who has made billions of dollars in Hollywood, criticizing how other black artists make their way. Not everyone gets the opportunities you've had, Sam. Not everyone can pick and choose their roles. Some of us had to fight for every single part we got." "And you think I didn't fight?" Samuel's voice was rising now, the famous intensity fully unleashed. "You think I just walked into Hollywood and they handed me a career? I was 46 years old before anyone knew my name. 46. I spent decades doing small parts, struggling to get noticed, watching less talented people get the roles I deserved because they fit the industry's idea of what a leading man should look like." He leaned forward, his eyes blazing with an anger that seemed to have been building for a long time. "You want to talk about fighting? I was an usher at Martin Luther King Jr.'s funeral. I was involved in the civil rights movement, while some of these people you're defending weren't even born yet. I've been fighting my entire life, Whoopi, so don't lecture me about what it means to struggle in this industry." The mention of MLK's funeral sent a shockwave through the studio. The audience was completely silent now, witnessing something far more intense than anyone had anticipated. Whoopi's expression flickered with something that might have been recognition of how far this had gone, but her pride wouldn't let her back down. "Nobody is questioning your civil rights credentials, Sam, but that was 50 years ago. What have you done lately to lift up the next generation, besides criticizing them in interviews?" Samuel stood up from his chair so fast that it startled everyone in the studio, his full height commanding the space as his voice boomed across the room. "What have I done? I've mentored more young black actors than I can count. I've used my platform to get projects greenlit that would never have been made otherwise. I've taken pay cuts to work with directors who couldn't afford my usual salary because I believed in their vision. I've been doing this work quietly, without press releases and social media campaigns, because that's not why you do it. You do it because it's right." He pointed directly at Whoopi, and the gesture seemed to carry the weight of decades of frustration. "But you want to know what I haven't done? I haven't sat on a talk show for 20 years taking shots at people who are actually out there making movies. I haven't appointed myself the arbiter of who's doing black cinema correctly and who isn't. I haven't confused having an opinion with having actually done the work." The accusation was devastating. Whoopi's face flushed with anger, and when she spoke, her voice was shaking with barely controlled emotion. "How dare you? I have an Oscar, Sam. I broke barriers in this industry when nobody would give a black woman a chance. I've spent my entire career fighting for representation, fighting for our stories to be told. Don't you dare imply that I haven't done the work. 1 Oscar, Samuel shot back. 1. In a career that spans 40 years, and you've spent the last 20 of those years sitting at this table instead of making films. So forgive me if I don't accept you as the authority on what it means to be a working black actor in Hollywood. The words hung in the air like a bomb that had just detonated. The other host sat in stunned silence. Joy Behar looked like she was witnessing a car accident in slow motion. Sarah Haynes had her hand over her mouth. The audience was frozen, unable to believe what they were seeing unfold between 2 people they had assumed were friends. Whoopi stood up as well, and now they were facing each other across the table like 2 fighters in a ring. You want to compare careers, Sam? Let's compare careers. You've made a fortune playing loud, angry black men who curse and wave guns around. You've given white audiences exactly what they expect to see from us. And you have the nerve to criticize other artists for playing it safe? Those characters have dialogue that people remember, Samuel fired back. Those characters have become cultural touchstones. When people quote movies, they quote my movies. When they think of iconic cinema, they think of Jules Winfield holding that Bible and asking about hamburgers. What's the last line anyone quoted from one of your films? The question was cruel and calculated, and landed exactly where Samuel intended it to. Whoopi looked like she had been physically struck. This isn't about quotes or box office or any of that, Whoopi said, her voice cracking slightly. This is about respect. This is about you sitting in interviews dismissing the work that people are doing while you coast on a franchise that's basically a cartoon. A cartoon? Samuel laughed, but there was no humor in it. The Marvel Cinematic Universe has done more for diversity in film than any movement or initiative or think piece. We've had black directors, black writers, black leads. We made Black Panther, which meant more to our community than anything in decades. And you call it a cartoon because you didn't get to be part of it? The implication was clear and devastating. Whoopi's eyes widened with fury. That's what you think this is about? You think I'm jealous of your Marvel career? I was winning awards when you were still doing bit parts in Goodfellas. I was changing the industry while you were waiting for Quentin Tarantino to discover you. Don't you dare suggest that anything I'm saying comes from jealousy. Then what does it come from, Whoopi? Samuel's voice dropped to something quieter, but somehow more intense. Because we've known each other for 30 years, and you've never come at me like this before. So what's really going on here? What's really driving this attack? The question seemed to pierce through the anger and expose something more vulnerable beneath. Whoopi was silent for a long moment, and when she spoke, her voice had lost some of its aggressive edge. What's driving this is that I'm tired, Sam. I'm tired of watching people who have made it forget where they came from. I'm tired of successful black artists turning around and criticizing the ones coming up behind them instead of lifting them up. I'm tired of us tearing each other down when we should be supporting each other. Samuel's expression softened slightly, but his voice remained firm. And you think I don't support the next generation? You think those comments in that interview were meant to tear anyone down? I was trying to challenge us to be better, to demand more from an industry that still doesn't give us what we deserve. That's not tearing down, that's pushing forward. It didn't read that way, Whoopi said, her voice tired now. It read like an elder statesman looking down on everyone who came after him. Then that's on the reporter who wrote it, not on me. Samuel shook his head slowly. But you didn't ask me about it privately. You didn't call me up and say, "Hey Sam, what did you mean by that?" You waited until I was sitting on your show and ambushed me on live television. That's not how friends treat each other, Whoopi. The observation seemed to land somewhere deep. Whoopi's aggressive posture deflated slightly. You're right, she admitted quietly. I should have called you first. But I was angry, and I let that anger drive me to do something I shouldn't have done. The studio was absolutely silent, witnessing something rare on television. A genuine moment of reflection in the middle of a heated confrontation. Samuel took a deep breath, his own anger seeming to recede slightly. I've spent my whole career being misunderstood, Whoopi. Being reduced to sound bites and quotes taken out of context. I thought you, of all people, would understand that. I thought you would give me the benefit of the doubt before assuming the worst. I should have, Whoopi acknowledged. But you said some things just now that hurt too. Things about my career, about my choices. You went for blood, Sam. Because you went for mine first. Samuel's voice was firm, but no longer hostile. You called my work a cartoon. You suggested I've been playing the same character for 30 years. You questioned my contribution to our community. What did you expect me to do? Sit there and take it?" They stood there, facing each other, two legends who had spent 30 years as friends and 5 minutes as enemies. The audience watched in silence, uncertain how this would end. Finally, Samuel spoke again, his voice carrying the weight of hard-earned wisdom. "You know what the real tragedy of this is, Whoopi? We're giving them exactly what they want. Two successful black people tearing each other apart on national television. That's the story they're going to tell tomorrow. Not about my new movie, not about the work we've both done, just two black celebrities fighting. We're better than this." The observation seemed to break through the last of Whoopi's defensiveness. She nodded slowly, her expression shifting to something like regret. "You're right, we are better than this." She paused, then extended her hand across the table. "I'm sorry, Sam. I let my anger get the best of me, and I said things I shouldn't have said. That's not who I want to be." Samuel looked at her hand for a long moment. The studio held its breath. Then, slowly, he reached out and took it. "I'm sorry, too. I said things that were meant to hurt, and that's never okay, no matter how provoked I felt. We've been through too much together to let it end like this." Whoopi nodded, and for a moment, the mask of the television host fell away completely, revealing the woman underneath. "You remember when we first met? That showcase in New York, 1985? We were both nobody, both hungry, both convinced we were going to change the world." Samuel's expression softened with the memory. "I remember. You did that one-woman show that blew everyone away. I was doing some off-Broadway thing that 3 people saw, and we stayed up all night talking about what we were going to do when we made it. We said we'd never forget where we came from," Whoopi continued, her voice thick with emotion. "We said we'd always have each other's backs. We said we'd never let this industry turn us into the kind of people who tear each other down. And then I went and gave an interview that made you feel like I'd forgotten all of that," Samuel said quietly. "And you went and ambushed me on live TV instead of just calling me. We both broke our promises today. Maybe we needed to break them to remember why we made them in the first place." Whoopi wiped at her eyes quickly, the gesture almost unconscious. 40 years is a long time, Sam. We've both changed. We've both made mistakes. But the core of who we are, what we believe in, that's still the same. At least I hope it is." "It is," Samuel confirmed. "I still believe in telling stories that matter. I still believe in opening doors for the people coming up behind us. I still believe that we have a responsibility to use whatever platform we've been given to make things better. I just express it differently than you do sometimes." The audience began to applaud, softly at first, then building to something more substantial. Two people who had nearly destroyed a 30-year friendship had found their way back to each other in real time, on live television. But before he sat down, Samuel turned to address the camera directly, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had learned hard lessons about what really mattered. "To everyone watching who saw what just happened here, I want you to understand something. Disagreements happen, even between people who love and respect each other. What matters is whether you have the courage to step back, to listen, to admit when you've gone too far. Whoopi and I just showed you what that looks like. It's not pretty, it's not comfortable, but it's real. And sometimes real is the only thing that can save a relationship." He sat back down, and Whoopi reached over to squeeze his hand. The other hosts were wiping their eyes. The audience was still applauding. And what had started as one of the most shocking confrontations in daytime television history had transformed into something else entirely, a lesson in how two strong people can disagree without destroying each other. What do you think about this incredible confrontation? Did Whoopi go too far, or did Samuel deserve to be called out? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and make sure to subscribe for more stories that will absolutely leave you speechless.